AI and plagiarism. Well, the AI world comes with its own challenges. And one of the challenges is how do you ensure that the content that is produced or being given to a university, to a professor, to a company, to a professional, to an entrepreneur is genuine, factual, not generated by AI. And more importantly, it's true, it's not false. Well, that's an interesting challenge that AI gives us. And we're going to discuss this with none other than Jon Gillham, who is an entrepreneur himself and is doing a lot of work in this space through his company, originality.ai, in helping people identify whether the content being produced is factual, it's not generated by AI, and also the readability of it. So let's go and talk to him.
Hello, and welcome to the Fit for Privacy podcast with Punit Bhatia. This is the podcast for those who care about their privacy. Here, your host, Punit Bhatia, has conversations with industry leaders about their perspectives, ideas, and opinions relating to privacy, data protection, and related matters. Be aware that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are not legal advice. Let us get started.
So here we are. Welcome, John. Welcome to Fit for Privacy podcast.
Thanks, Punit. Yeah, happy to be here and talk about it.
It's a pleasure to have you. And let's maybe start with a very simple question because everyone has his or her own definition. What do you think, or how do you define artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I think so. For my world, which is mostly focused on the world of text, is having a machine generate content in a way that is almost indecipherable from a human, and sharing an seemingly intelligent thought.
Okay, that's very simple and crisp, intelligent and crisp. Very nice. When we talk about AI, the issue is it brings in bias, hallucination, and many, many other challenges. Of course, everyone talks about bias and hallucination, so let's park them. But apparently, it also creates challenges in content, challenges in copyright, and so on. Can you talk about some of the challenges as you see them?
Outside of the challenge that you just mentioned, there's two main challenges when people are using AI and publishing that content on the web. Challenge one is that if they have hired writers, they might be happy to pay them $100 an article, $1,000 an article, whatever their rates might be. They're not super happy to find out that that content was copied and pasted out of ChatGPT in 5 seconds. So that sort of fairness of value is one problem. And the second problem is that the mass publishing of AI generated content has been shown to have Google take manual actions and penalize sites. So sort of unleashing mass volumes of AI generated content is a very quick way to getting a website into a lot of trouble.
Indeed, that's a very big challenge, and I think it also links to in universities, the professors asking students to write assignments, and then they ask ChatGPT to write it or something similar, and the professor doesn't know if it's well written by a student or well written by ChatGPT, and typically we call it plagiarism, right?
Yeah, AI plagiarism, it's a giant problem in academia. The number of people that are plagiarizing in calling that sort of copying and pasting someone's existing work has massively dropped, because who would do that when it's so easily caught, and then they could use AI to create the content themselves. So yeah, it's a huge problem within academia right now, and really challenging one to solve for them.
So is it copyright issue? Is it a plagiarism issue, or is it a privacy issue? What is it in your view?
Yeah, I think for sure it's a plagiarism issue. The case of academia is an academic disciplinary issue, an academic dishonesty issue. So definitely plagiarism. Copyright, I think that's going to be determined. I think most OpenAI, most large language model are trying to make it pretty clear that they're happy to have whoever created the content receive that they own the output. the USPTO and the copyright sort of governing bodies are not open to passing. So there's been some recent studies or some recent cases where they have been reluctant to copyright AI generated work. And so I think that's still going to play out. I think that's not settled. And the question is going to become really nuanced in the very near future, where what is AI versus what is human? And when we have sort of a cyborg writing experience, does that still become, is that copyrightable work or not? So I think copyright, like plagiarism, simple. Copyright, nuanced. Privacy, it shouldn't be. So as long as the LLMs don't produce information that is potentially revealing private information, I don't see a privacy risk with the use of generative AI for text creation.
Okay. So talking about plagiarism, I think there are two contexts. One is the students, but that's a different ball game. But also there's this context, you or I or any other entrepreneur hires somebody to write a copy, write a text, maybe an article, maybe an email, maybe a social media text, and somebody generates it from the artificial intelligence and gives us, and we don't know how accurate or how factual it is, and then we end up doing the work. So how do we address that?
Yeah, so that was exactly the use case that we were struggling with when we started the current company, Originality. Was we would had before that ran a content marketing business where we would hire writers, hire entrepreneurs that would want content to rank on their site, and we struggled to be able to say we had a policy around not writers not using AI, but we didn't have any good control mechanism in place to ensure that happened. And so that's where we launched Originality, which was an AI detection tool to help ensure that website owners, entrepreneurs that were hiring writers were aware of the content that they were getting. You know, we're not against AI content. We think there's a great use case within marketing for it, but we think the entrepreneur or the person purchasing the content should be the one that's making the decision on when it gets used and when it doesn't get used.
But the challenge also is any checks that you make on the system in terms of plagiarism or AI generated content or whatever, those have what you say, call it false outcomes or false positives, isn't that?
Yeah, so the way we evaluate a classifier, which is so AI detectors are sort of their own AI that are called classifiers, and then the way that they work is the way that you evaluate how effective they are is you feed them known AI content, known human content, and then identify the number of times that it correctly identified AI content as AI and human content as human. One challenge with the use of these detectors is that they are not perfect. No classifier will ever be, 100.00000% accurate. That's just not going to happen. It's similar to the weather, the prediction. Like it says it's going to rain. Sometimes most of the time it'll rain if it says it's going to rain. Doesn't always. And that's similar to these classifiers. So although they can be very accurate, 99% accurate on GPT-4 content, 2.5-3% false positive rate. So false positives do happen, and that's when it identifies a human written content as AI, incorrectly identifies it as AI generated. And that happens in our case with sort of web content in the sort of 2.5 to 3.5% of the time. And that's unfortunate. It's painful. We hate it. It's like the one thing we would change if we could wave a magic wand and improve our tech. That's the number we would drive down.
So if I get it right, there is a challenge to identify whether the content is original or generated by AI.
Yes.
You can use tools, you can use some engines which help you validate or verify if it is original or not. But then that's not the be all end all solution, because there is a false positive detection, say 5% or 10% on it, which happens. So the only way is to do it through many channels and be certain, and also use your own human intelligence.
Yeah, so we see sort of sub 5% is kind of what we've been seeing in terms of that false positive rate. But you're exactly right. That is the challenge they're facing. And then a tool like Originality or other classifiers are used to help identify. If you identify content as likely AI generated, there are a few different things that you can do to help know with certainty. We have a free Chrome extension that allows you to visualize the creation process. And so basically you get to watch the writer write. So it's all the metadata that exists inside of a Google document. The tool extracts that and then recreates the creation process. So you get to see this sort of trend over time of the writer writing the document versus just seeing it copied and pasted quickly, couple changes, and it identified it as high AI, and all you see in the creation process was a copy and a paste. You're pretty confident in that situation that's the tool correctly identified it as AI.
Yeah. But then there's also another challenge with content generated by AI. I mean, of course, you want to know if it's generated by AI, and okay, if you have 95% certainty that it is not, or it is. The other challenge is it factual? Is it really based on facts? Because you know the incident which happened in one of the US courts. The lawyer asked it something,
Yep.
It got some text, it submitted the response, and then the law being referred never existed. So there was no factual evidence of the content being relevant. And
Yep.
is that something also that can be identified through these, what do you say, algorithms?
Yeah, so it is definitely a challenge, and what's unique to the challenge, copy editors, when they got a piece of content, their sort of internal skepticism would be higher when the content was poorly written. What's happening now is ChatGPT and all these LLMs are so phenomenal at intelligently and convincingly BSing and making factual errors. So that is definitely a big challenge. We're developing a tool. It's still in beta. It's called a fact-checking aid, and so it basically uses retrieval of existing knowledge in the world plus an LLM to evaluate each fact statement that is made in an article to evaluate whether or not that statement is true or false. Now, this is still AI evaluating AI, and so it's improves the efficacy of fact checking, but doesn't produce a high enough level that we say, you still need to have a human in the loop, but it's a fact checking aid to make that process a lot faster, where you get all the sort of relevant Google links and an opinion based on an LLM of whether or not the statement is factually correct or not.
Okay, so essentially what we are saying is that these are tools that assist a human in being more sure, but the human intelligence needs to be applied in addition. Let's put it like that. And
Yeah,
then it's the collective intelligence of the AI tool plus the human in play that determines what is the reality. But up to a certain extent, the tools can help.
correct. Yes, it's the intelligence of the LLM plus the collective sort of knowledge of the top ranking articles on Google for that given fact, and then that's all fed into to the human to have them provide their sort of evaluation on by checking the sources, reviewing the LLM's opinion to determine whether or not that statement is factually accurate or not.
And then, while this is all on the content being produced, you also mentioned early on that there's this challenge of multitude of data or content being published on websites, as website content, as blogs, as articles, which is polluting, let's say, the web and creating a
Yes,
challenge to say what is real data, what is real content, and what is fake content, or not so real content. Is that something real challenge you see also?
yeah. So I think it's a. I'll go pretty high level with sort of the answer, but then try and answer it specifically. It's a question for society right now on where do we want AI content? Are we okay with reading AI content in different locations? Reading AI generated product reviews. I think most people are all on the same page that no, I don't want to read an AI generated review. I want to read a human generated review.
Yes.
We helped a journalist review an Amazon book that was about foraging, an Amazon Kindle book that was by an author that was published on Amazon about foraging, and we helped identify the book was AI generated, and in the book it mentioned to check whether or not a mushroom was poisonous by tasting it. Obviously terrible advice, could lead to death, And so it's a question on a bit of a societal question on, is this a problem or not? I think my sort of theory on this is that it is a problem. I don't want to read reviews that are generated by an AI. I want to read reviews that are written by a human that experienced that product and are providing their honest feedback. We've looked at sort of the rate at which AI, for lack of a better word, is sort of polluting different pockets of the internet. On Google search results, we've seen it go from sort of 6% of results were AI generated, and now it's sort of exponentially increased since ChatGPT is launched, and we're up to 12, 13% of Google search results are AI generated. And then that becomes a question on if all we're seeing in Google search results is AI generated content. If that day comes, would we still go to Google, or would we just go to the AI that created the content and has more context about our own situation and ask it the question there? So I think that's the long-winded answer, but I think it's societally, it depends on where we want to take it. I think there's some pockets we definitely don't want it, but what we're seeing is it is currently goo getting everywhere in the world right now.
So if I understand correctly, you're saying about 15% of the content on web is AI generated. So which is about 1 in 6 articles, 1 in 6 emails, 1 in 6 websites is being generated, and we don't know if that's for real, if it's fact checked or not. And that's where I think your company originality.ai comes in. And tell us, what do you do in that context?
Yeah, so that's correct. So Originality is a tool for copy editors. So anybody that is getting a piece of content from a writer and then looking to publish that content on the web. So somebody that's an entrepreneur could be acting as a copy editor when they hire a writer, get a piece of content, and then publish it on the web. We help make sure that content meets the requirements that you're after, so that you can hit publish with integrity. So make sure it's not AI generated, make sure it's not plagiarized, make sure it's fact checked, make sure the readability level is where you want it to be. So it's a tool to help copy editors work with writers and make sure that they can hit publish with integrity.
That's very nice thing. And you are using what you shared with us, the plagiarism checker, the fact checker, the readability checker, and also the AI checker, all aspects. Is that?
That's correct. Yeah, and continue to build out more features that help editors.
Oh, that's wonderful thing that you're doing. How did you come about this idea of originality.ai?
Yeah, so it really stemmed from when we were running our content marketing business and we were working with writers, working with editors, working with clients, and there were no really good controls in place to be able to help show that content meets these requirements of not AI generated, not plagiarized, readability level. And so we set out to build that sort of tool set for editors.
Okay, that's a good service you're doing, because this is one of the real challenges. And what would be your message to anyone who is a professional and maybe say an entrepreneur or a small or medium-sized company or even a large-sized company and producing content? How can they stay on the top of their game when they're producing content? And of course, they want to leverage AI to an extent, but in the right way.
That's it. Like exactly what you said, in the right way, and know that when they're doing it. I think there's great use cases for AI for content to help websites. I think companies should be making that decision sort of in a heads up way, knowing that they're making the decision themselves and not just sort of head in the sand, hoping that they're not getting a ton of AI content and then finding out later that all their writers were just using generative AI, and that resulted in their website taking a punishment. So that's sort of a key. I think the key thing for people is to understand whether or not AI is being used on their site and make that decision for themselves and not outsource that decision to writers.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And if I may ask, do you use AI for your own personal day-to-day life in some way or the other? Are there any use cases you want to share?
Yes, I use it for writing, which is kind of funny considering what we just talked about. But I'm an engineer. I wish I could communicate in spreadsheets all the time, and so I've trained it. I have a custom GPT that's been trained on my own writing style, and then I'll dump my own thoughts in and then say write it like me, and then I'll use that quite a bit, and then I use it a lot for quick data analysis. I use it. I find those are probably my two most common use cases: is quick data analysis about some topic to try and help explore something and understand it more thoroughly, and then for writing.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I think it does ease up things. It helps you give a quick start, because sometimes you're struggling or thinking, what do I write? How do I write? And then it gives you a jump start. And of course, if you use human intelligence on top and write it in your own style, own tone of voice, language, then it's a good tool. But if you copy paste, then of course it's not the ideal approach.
Yeah.
So with that, John, I think it was wonderful and insightful to know about all these challenges that AI is coming up with, and how also you and many others are solving these challenges that are emerging in the new world. So I would say, in that sense, thank you so much for sharing your insights, and it was a privilege to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Punit. I think it's an important topic that I think society is going to be wrestling with for many years to come. So yeah, it's lots of excitement, also some concerns. So happy to be involved in that conversation.
It's a start, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for listening. If you liked the show, feel free to share it with a friend and write a review. If you have already done so, thank you so much. And if you did not like the show, don't bother and forget about it. Take care and stay safe. Fit for Privacy helps you to create a culture of privacy and manage risks by creating, defining, and implementing a privacy strategy that includes delivering scenario-based training for your staff. We also help those who are looking to get certified in CIPPE, CIPM, and CIPT through on-demand courses that help you prepare and practice for certification exam. Want to know more? Visit www.fit4privacy.com. That's www.fit4privacy.com. If you have questions or suggestions, drop an email at hello@fit4privacy.com. Until next time, goodbye.